Welcome to our executive interview series at CyberTalks, presented by Cyberscoop. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Tim Robinson, Consulting Solutions Architect, Public Sector Security at Worldwide Technology. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start by asking, how has the increasing shift to and reliance on cloud services made real-time cybersecurity and threat detection easier or harder?
Great question. I know we've written extensively about this on WWT.com, and there are a couple perspectives. One is anytime you add to your cyber architecture, you're going to add a little bit of risk, right? So the more things you add to it, you typically add more risk. So you have to sort of think about what you're adding to your architecture. I will say that most organizations have some version of on-premise assets. Some are in the cloud, right? And then when you try to secure both, you have to look at them similar, but in different ways, right? Invariably, when I walk into a customer, they'll say, hey, Dr. Robinson, I have this application in the cloud. I have this data in the cloud. I also have these applications and these data sets on-prem. Right, and when you look at that, they typically say, how do you integrate my application so that I can be able to touch both sets of data? That can be cumbersome, right? So you have to have the knowledge to be able to do it. You have to understand what that looks like in terms of risk. Now, that's just I don't want to make everything doom and gloom. There are positives of going to the cloud and leveraging things from the cloud. Now, the first perspective I talked to you about was, how do you secure things in the cloud, meaning your data, your applications, things of that nature. Now, there's another perspective, right? How do you leverage tools and applications in the cloud to secure what you have? For example, I have endpoints. You can leverage software in the cloud to protect those endpoints. So the dynamics shift, right? You go from putting your data in the cloud and looking at how to protect those things to reduce risk, to now you're looking at how do I leverage applications in the cloud to protect my endpoints? And those endpoints could be in the cloud. Those endpoints could be on your tabletop, right? On your desktop, right? So that in itself is not necessarily an increase in risk, but you have to think about how you employ those things, especially if you're talking about an enterprise level customer where you have endpoints on the East Coast, endpoints on the West Coast, and anywhere in between. So yes, you do increase your risk a little bit by leveraging things in the cloud. And the reason why I say it could be an increase in risk is because some of my DoD customers, they'll say, hey, Dr. Robinson, I do understand leveraging softwares and tools in the cloud, but what if we become disconnected? So that's a real risk when you're a forward-based operating commander, and you're out forward and you're talking about leveraging applications in the cloud to secure your workloads, to secure your applications, to secure your endpoints. So that's risk. Now, I will dial it back and say there are all sorts of advantages of using the cloud even more so. Think about in terms of scalability, right? If I have an enterprise organization and I want to open up another arm somewhere, service arm, we'll just say in a different country, you could spin up more applications or more compute, more resources, more storage bins in the cloud, much more easier than you can do it on-prem. Is that adding to your risk? Maybe, but is that adding to your flexibility to doing things in the cloud? Absolutely. You as a CISO or a CIO, you have to weigh those risks. The bottom line is there are pluses and minuses with regards to leveraging things in the cloud.
Next, I'd like to ask, the White House's national cybersecurity strategy and its push for zero trust security have established critical security milestones for the nation and government agencies to meet. How have those initiatives made a difference in the way your organization looks at supporting your customers around cybersecurity?
Sure, absolutely. I will take a step back and say initially, Chris DeRusha, he did a great job with establishing this policy. What it does for me as an architect, it gives me a rubric. Right? I have a target to shoot at. So when I go into customers, typically I start with an ideation session. And in that ideation session, we typically do an evaluation of their network architecture, their security architecture. So we do what's called a tools rationalization workshop. Now, when you're going on this journey to zero trust, you don't want to just go out and buy a boatload of items, right? So what we do is we look at what you have so you can leverage those current investments. And in leveraging those current investments, we use the policy that was published. It was published in March 2023, in addition to other policies from NIST, DISA, and NSA to help our customers understand what they need to do in terms of getting to zero trust and how they need to get there. Now, what I said is it's a rubric. It helps me let the customer understand that, hey, we don't have to do everything at once. We go back to that integration topic that I was talking about. How can we leverage those current investments, but using integration as a mechanism to get you to zero trust? Typically, we start with something like two-factor authentication, right? Where's your Active Directory? Where are you getting your user-based identity from, right? All of these things, and more so, I think it's probably mentioned about 8 times in that policy, so it's pretty important to understand how to get to zero trust when using things like identity. I think it helps us out. It helps the customer understand what are my timelines, what are the things that the government, from a national security standpoint, makes me focus on, that make me think I need to focus on, or helps me understand what I need to focus on is a better way of putting it, and it makes everything a much smoother implementation.
Well, Tim Robinson, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join us here at
Absolutely.
CyberTalks and share some of your insights on the topic of cybersecurity.
Sure, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.